So as of late, I've been doing a ton of research about a new video that I want to make talking about my way too early 2025 AFL mock draft. Now, I'm not exactly too sure if that is going to be out by the time that this video comes out or if it will be coming out after, but just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a hint on where I'm basing this and where it's going to, again, lead into the title of this video and what you guys are probably all here for, is that I believe with the first overall pick, the West Coast Eagles, there's a big chance they take Dersma. Again, potential best player available, also fits really well with their team, and again, is close with Harley Reid. Again, I think they'll have pick 2, where they'll take the WA product, of course, in Fred Rodriguez. At pick number 3, we're going to have, of course, Richmond's pick, and pick number 4, I'm going to assume, of course, Richmond are going to have North Melbourne's pick right there. So again, why I'm talking about all of this draft stuff is because there's a lot of really interesting players available by the time you get to about pick 3 and pick 4. Again, there are 2 clear best players available, in my opinion, at those picks. You got first and foremost Cooper Duff-Tytler, of course, the Victorian ruckman. I think the Tigers are going to be very much looking at. And then with the 4th overall pick, probably arguably the best available player in the draft, you have Dyson Sharp, the South Australian player who is not only a really good midfielder, but he can play halfback and he can roam around the wing as well. Again, Dyson Sharp is projected by a lot of people right now to go with either pick 3 or pick number 4 to the Richmond Football Club. And why this is interesting, in my opinion, is because, as we know, there are some teams out there who have reportedly over the last couple of years been pretty cautious on potentially taking South Australian players with top picks. Again, I think this is really all stemmed from the fact that only 4 or so years ago, Jason Horne-Francis would go pick number 1 to North Melbourne and would request a trade back home to South Australia a year later. Again, I'm not saying Richmond are like North Melbourne at all. After all, it is being reported that North really badly handled that, and Richmond are a 10 times bigger team, 10 times more the money, 10 times more the fans, 10 times more viewers, etc., who are probably not going to be afraid to take a South Australian player. But in saying that, it's not only just the draft players, but a lot of AFL players in general, like Joe Richards, who was only at Collingwood for a year. He got brought out of Collingwood to Port Adelaide after only 1 year with the team. And as we know, it has been said for a long time now that Port Adelaide and Adelaide negotiate with all South Australian players basically from any team in the AFL just to get a headspace on where they're at. Where do they potentially want to make a move home, or are they happy on where they're playing? Again, I have no doubt that even if Dyson Sharp absolutely loves it in Richmond, if they do take him, the Port Adelaide Football Club are going to speak to him no matter what. And I'm pretty sure this is like legally allowed to happen in the AFL after like 3 months of them being in the league, which is just absolutely insane that the tampering rules in the AFL like do not exist. Like, if you did that into the NBA, it'd basically be considered like a crime and you would go to freaking jail, man, and lose all your picks if you tried to do that with another team. But where this is interesting is this was actually mentioned on a couple different social medias where fans have given their thoughts and opinions, and I've asked a lot of my friends who are Richmond fans, what do they think about the Tigers maybe going for Dyson Sharp? Or could there be another alternative option where maybe at pick 4 they're like, look, we can take Dyson Sharp here because he's the best available, or we can try and trade this pick to an Adelaide team for a package of players or picks, whatever it might be, just because we are worried that Dyson Sharp is going to get talked out of our team in a year or two, in the future. And it just so happens that Richmond happen to be interested in one of Port Adelaide's best players, if not their best player, in Zach Butters, who is not a free agent this year, but of course next year, and is reportedly already starting to talk to teams that could be interested in him and kind of just assess his market on where he's at. Again, I've reported on the channel before that Richmond are very, very interested in potentially trading for Zach Butters, and they have a disgusting amount of salary cap to, of course, spend in the 2025, of course, off season, where they're going to have to spend it per the AFL rules. And Zach Butters could be that guy that they, of course, target. Again, Zach Butters is about 23, 24 years old, meaning that he's going to be looking for an 8-year type of contract, especially where the market is for all these type of players. Again, I wouldn't even be surprised if he tried to get like a 9-year type of deal. Now, he could very well want to stay in Port Adelaide, and he might absolutely love that. But at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting on where Port Adelaide are assessing where they're at right now and where their future is going to be. Because after all, by the end of this year, they will be having a new coach and could have a very different outlook on a couple of the players that are playing. And after all, Dean Cox, when he's taken over Sydney, there's a bunch of players like Joel Hamling and Peter Ladhams, who would never get a game under John Longmire, who are all of a sudden getting a game under Sydney, whether it's for the better or the worse. Now, Port Adelaide could say to themselves, hold on a second, look, we couldn't win a premiership under Ken Hinkley. At the time of making this video, we are not in the 8 and we're floating around that 12th position. It might be a good idea to try and get some draft picks in before Tasmania come into the league. And of course, you know, I think re-top up our list and just go from there. Again, if we look at the whole entire facts right now, they could also be saying, look, we don't know if Zach Butters is going to re-sign with us in 2026. And if he does leave, we will get a very good pick as compensation, especially if we're bad next year. But if we're not bad and our team stays the same and we finish 10th again, that pick might only be like, again, pick 8 or 9, something like that. And there might not be a great South Australian player available at that pick. Whereas, so they could be saying to themselves, look, we don't know if Zach Butters wants to stay. If he's in negotiations with Richmond right now, we could say to him, look, if you want to go, we can facilitate a trade for you to happen right now. And they may go and ask for Richmond. They might be like, look, we want you pick 3 or 4 so we can go out and get Dyson Sharp. And we also want your future first round selection. Now, again, I think Richmond would very much say no to that, because even though Zach Butters is an elite player, with how good Richmond have been at drafting, I don't think they'd be willing to give up like pick 3 this year and like pick 3 next year for Zach Butters. After all, they probably think they could eventually get a better player maybe one day with one of those picks, even though they would have to be pretty lucky because Butters is an absolute gem. But Port Adelaide would be thinking that, and I don't think that trade would ever happen. Eventually, how I think it would go is they would ask for pick 4 and a future second, and Richmond would probably agree to do that. After all, Zach Butters, I'm not going to call him a generational player, but for the last 2 or 3 years, he's been a top 5 player in the league who has gotten his team to 2 or 3 preliminary finals. I think it's been since he's been at the club, which is absolutely insane. He also very much fits Richmond's, I think, need of a player. Again, he might be a tiny bit old. He'd be 24 by the time they get him, and they'd probably rather a 22 or 23-year-old, but 24 could actually be that perfect age range. He's not too young as 22, 23, but he's not too old as 25, 26. 24 could be the perfect age where they maybe say to him, look, if you come to us after maybe 1 year, you could very well be the captain of the club. After all, Zach Butters is a phenomenal leader, and Richmond don't have many options after Nank. Again, all their options are like Jaden Short and Broad, who are going to be in their 30s, and they might be looking for a captain to take over for the next 4 or 5 years like what Nank has done, while they develop Josh Smiley and Sam Lawler to be their next future leaders. So this could be massive for Richmond. Again, you could be giving up pick 4 and like pick 24 next year for a player in Zach Butters who would automatically become your best player, a Brownlow contender like he always is, and probably your future captain of the club. While if you're Port Adelaide, if you don't think you're going anywhere and you're going to be stuck in that like 8 to 12 ladder position range and you want to re-top up before Tasmania come in, you could very well get Dyson Sharp, the best South Australian prospect we've seen, I think probably since Horne-Francis, and you could very well get another early second round pick from the Richmond Football Club, and you clear some cap space to maybe in the future go after, again, another South Australian player. And this is even more interesting when you realise that we don't know if Zach Butters does want to re-sign. Again, I don't think he's going to re-sign with Port Adelaide by the end of 2025. I think he will speak to a bunch of clubs and see where his market is at, and I think Richmond will be the massive team that will go for him, offer him a ton of money. They'll have the, I think, of course, cap space to make it happen. They will have the facilities to be able to go and get a trade done. It is just the team that I think Zach Butters is going to be really interested in maybe this year. And then, of course, next year. If he doesn't go to a team this year, he could very well re-sign with Port next year or assess his options again. So there is a lot to talk about here. And this is still pretty early on as it stands. But in reality, right now, Zach Butters to Richmond kind of makes a lot of sense. And Dyson Sharp to Port Adelaide also makes a lot of sense. And I wouldn't even be surprised if deep down inside, again, Port are a very smart team. They know Tassie are coming in. They're taking all the picks. I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, look, we can get Dyson Sharp out of this, who is the best SA product we've seen since Baby Horne-Francis, and get another early second round pick. That is a lot in the economy of the AFL right now, especially with Tassie coming in. It could be Port's last chance to do it. It is going to be very interesting to see how this, of course, does unfold. Again, I would very much like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this in the comment section down below. Should Richmond go after Zach Butters? Do Port Adelaide want him to maybe leave so they can re-top up on their draft picks? Again, I'd very much like to know your thoughts and opinions down below. Subscribe to the channel for all latest sports content and news. Subscribe to my, of course, gaming channel, which will be getting linked in the description down below. Comment your thoughts and opinions, and I'll be seeing you guys next time. Goodbye.